today in the studio, folks. I got one of my favorite because he talks sales, closing, and he's got a unique approach. He believes, at least I think, the single most effective way to sell anything to anyone in 2021 is to be a problem finder and a problem solver and not a product pusher. I like that.
You got it.
For Jeremy, the embodiment of this philosophy has made him one of the wealthiest sales professionals on the planet. During his 17-year sales career, he was recognized by the Direct Selling Association as the 45th highest earning producer out of more than 100 million salespeople selling anything and everything worldwide. Jeremy's earnings as a commission-only salesperson were in the multiple seven figures every single year. He's the chairman of Seventh Level, a global sales training company with its headquarters in Sydney, Australia. Jeremy's particular brand of sales training pioneers the unique use of behavioral science and human psychology within the sales process, reflective of his deep studies in the subject from Utah Valley University. An educated man. This scientific method of selling created by Jeremy has helped over 140,000 salespeople in 37 countries over the last 3 years to 3x, 5x, and even 10x their sales results. He's been featured in Forbes, USA Today, Entrepreneur Magazine, Thrive Global, Yahoo Finance, Disrupt, and a host of other publications on the topic of sales, persuasion, and role of psychology and human behavior in the buying process, which I think is instrumental. Seventh Level's clients include Fortune 500 companies all the way to the SMB companies, down to individual salespeople selling anything. You got a new book out, The Model of Selling to an Unsellable Generation, co-authored by Jerry Acuff.
You know Jerry.
My man Jerry.
Yeah.
CEO of Delta Point, and is being published early in the fall of 2021. Is it out yet or no?
It's in the final stages.
Isn't this the fall? No, the fall.
No, we're like in the spring, dude. What?
I'm terrible.
COVID has messed you up, man.
Dude, I'm terrible with like that type of shit.
It's May.
Like someone says, you know, where's China? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like I'm terrible with biography.
Geography?
Yeah.
Educated, man.
So, Jeremy, welcome to the show. I want to get right into some shit because, as you know, I'm a sales guy myself.
You are. You're the guru.
Well, I think personally, when people come to me and ask, dude, how the hell did you build an 8-figure company going on 9? How did you close all these deals? How did you do what you did being a high school dropout? And I say 100%, the ability to sell, close, and persuade people.
100%.
Now, I never made 7 figures selling, though.
It was nice.
Well, I mean,
the government took like half of it, but other than that, it was good.
Yeah, but like I've never made that much selling. I've made up to $500,000 a year selling.
That's still really good. That's really great as a salesperson.
Yeah, but I didn't know if I was selling the wrong thing or, you know, what it was. But I, you know, sold cars, sold RVs, sold all kinds of shit. But the boot camp that I received along the way was invaluable. That life experience and the skills that I developed to now build my own company. So to me, it's like, if you guys plan on being entrepreneurs in the world, dude, sales is 100% critical.
Selling and persuasion is the #1 asset you have to have as an individual in our day and age. Hands down. Hands down. I don't care who you are. You know, I call that non-sales selling. Let's say that if you're trying to move somebody, you're trying to persuade somebody, let's say you're not even paid a commission for it, right? Everybody's in sales now. I don't care who you are, what you do. Okay. If you're an entrepreneur who's trying to convince your employees to follow your vision, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others, right? If you're an employee who's trying to convince your boss, Chris, to give you a pay raise, you're trying to influence, you're trying to persuade, right? You're trying to convince. If you're an attorney who's trying to convince the judge that your client's innocent, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to move. If you're in politics, right? I've seen some of your shows, you've had some politicians on here, which I thought was ballsy, man. That's great. Because everybody has so much different opinions. But if you're in politics, you're trying to move others, people to vote for you. You're in persuasion. You're trying to move them. You're trying to convince them. You're trying to move them to your way of thinking. So everything you do, whether you're paid a commission for it or not, you are in sales.
Agreed.
Period.
And I think the difference between a good one and a bad one is the bad ones don't understand that they're in it.
Right. And I think they don't have the right skills. You have to have the right skills. You know, Tony Robbins, when I first got into sales, I was struggling so bad. And we'll talk about that because I actually flew in, got here late last night, and I was watching some of your podcasts. I was watching you interview the Wolf on Wall Street, Jordan. I thought that was a great interview, by the way. So well done. And I was just wanted to see what you were doing. And he said a few things there. I was like, interesting. I haven't thought about it in that way. But one thing that we have to understand is you have to have the right skills. You know, Tony Robbins, when I first got into sales, I was struggling so much. I mean, this is, 20 years ago. I was in college, right? Broke college kid, trying to learn, hardly making any sales. I remember my sales manager picked me up one night. This is after a couple months of hardly making any money, straight commission, you know, door-to-door salesperson, one of the first type of sales jobs you get, right? Where they just hire everybody because you paid straight commission. And struggling, you know, just horrible, you know, recently married, 21-year-old kid, got a daughter on the way, have to make money, have no choice, can't go live in the parents' basement at this point, you know, got to produce. And my sales manager popped into Tony Robbins' seating. He said something I think that quite literally changed my life and my view on everything. And he said, most people fail for the simple, and I might be butchering it. He said, most people fail for the simple reason they don't learn the right skills necessary to succeed. They don't learn the right skills. Now he goes on to say, everybody's taught skills, but he said the people who don't win in life, that fail, are the ones who are not taught the right ones. And that popped like a thing in my mind that maybe what I was being taught by the company that was training me and what I was learning in these books that they were having me read from I call them the old sales gurus. Maybe they just weren't the right skills. Maybe they just didn't work that well anymore. Maybe they were outdated. I never thought about that before in my mind up until that point.
Now, you got a podcast called Closers Are Losers.
I know. How does that make any sense?
I don't know. Well, to me, closers are badasses, but you've got a spin on the deal. Closers are losers.
Well, here's the thing. You know, when I was a W-2 salesperson, I made multiple 7 figures a year selling for companies, 3 different industries. Obviously, did I close sales? Well, yeah, I mean, they just didn't sign up, right? You have to close them. But what I want salespeople to think, there's this whole notion like, oh, I'm a closer, you know, especially in like this one space, we train a lot of people in high ticket closing, right? And when you go into every sales call thinking I'm here to close this person, psychologically, it does something to you. I want to go into a call, let's say if we're training a company, and I want them to start viewing themselves more as problem finders and problem solvers, not product pushers, not closers. You know, there's so much sales training out there where it's taught that selling is more adversarial. It's like you against the prospect, trying to win them over, trying to manipulate them over, trying to get your money, right? I've heard that concept, but nothing could be further from the truth. If you want to be the very best at sales, if you want to make hundreds of thousands of years a salesperson, if your company, if you want to really scale and your salespeople to like double and triple what they're doing now, you have to get them to view that selling is not adversarial. It's working with the prospect. It's what's the right word? It's collaborative, right? It's collaborative. It's you working with your prospects to help them find and solve problems that they didn't even know they had. One thing that everybody has to understand is that most of your prospects, when you first talk to them, don't even know they have a problem, Brad. Or maybe they know they have a problem, but maybe they don't know how bad the problem really is. Or maybe they don't know the consequences of what happens if they don't solve this problem? What are the ramifications? Or maybe through your questioning skills that you learn, that we teach, of course, in our training programs, maybe you're able to help them find 2 or 3 other or 4 other problems that they didn't even realize they had. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to become a problem finder and get them to see other problems in their mind that they didn't know they have, what do they start to view you as?
Expert.
The expert. The trusted authority, because you're there kind of, gingerly, we call it the velvet sledgehammer, like basically challenging their way of thinking that's allowed their situation to keep happening, okay? That's the difference between pushing somebody to try to get your way, to try to make your money, because they're just going to resist. That's just human behavior. And asking the right questions where the prospect starts to pull you in. That's where human behavior comes into the process.
So Utah Valley
University is where I went to college. I actually dropped out my senior year. I'm 13 credits away from my degree. I dropped out because in that sales job where I struggled so much, within that next year, I was making about $50,000 a month straight commission going to college learning pre-algebra.
Like, what am I doing?
I was 21. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I make more than a month in this professor teaching me algebra because I couldn't understand it. I was like, I'm never going to pass college. I've almost got my degree, but I cannot pass college algebra.
Did you elect that shit? Because I was doing pre-algebra in like 7th grade.
Dude, I am so, my mind, I'm like, my wife says like, look, you have one skill only. Persuasion, influence, everything else you suck at. So God did not give me any other skills. Selling is something that I learned how to do. Obviously, nobody's born as a salesperson,
Now, do you believe that?
I don't believe that. I don't believe science shows that people are born as salespeople.
Well,
show me the case studies, the evidence.
Well, you already said it. Everybody's in sales. So you're born a salesperson.
But you have to learn the skills.
I didn't say you're born a good one.
Okay. Okay. I see where you're coming now. Okay. I'm good. Everybody could say the same thing.
Now
they
correct it. Everybody is born a salesperson.
Everybody's born as a salesperson.
Who just influenced who, folks?
Ooh,
who just
I like it. Who? Closed me. I like it.
I just persuaded you to see things my way.
See? That's a good question.
That's why I use what's called logic. Now, I've made an acronym out of it because everybody wants framework nowadays. You know what I mean by framework?
I do.
Like you could talk to me for 2 hours and shoot the shit and get a lot of valuable information. Or go to somebody with less valuable information, but they've structured it in such a way where you can repeat it and then ask both people what was more valuable.
Duplicatable.
They will say the other guy's, not Brad's. Why? Well, because the structure, the framework. So I put a little framework towards the logic, and the logic stands for leverage, obvious gain, intelligence, and common sense. What do I mean by that? Dude, use your fucking head.
I have a question for you.
What?
Do people buy on emotion or logic though?
Emotion.
Yeah, 100%. Brain studies prove
that.
Hey,
you know what that tells? That's logic.
Dude, you're I like it, man. I like it. That's logic.
But it is. That's my point. Like I've heard your training.
I'm crying over here.
Hey,
I'm crying.
I've heard your training and a little bit of it.
You've heard a little bit of it.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. And it's good, believe me.
Oh yeah.
Or I wouldn't even have you on the show.
It's not that good. It's not that good.
It's good.
No, it's not that good. Just a bunch of boring stuff.
No, it's good. But I think, like for example, I have a closer school, and you're like, closers are losers.
Here's what I mean by that.
But that's a word play.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of the way people view closing.
Yeah.
I don't view closing as trying to win them or manipulate them. What I'm meaning is
hard sell, dickhead, old school.
Because it doesn't work.
Yeah, it just
doesn't work.
Yeah, but just for definition purposes, closer to you is like the old school dickhead.
Old school, push them, boiler room selling. Yeah. I hate to say this, Wolf on Wall Street. I'm sure Jordan's not like that, but the movie portrays him like that, right? I'm sure his stuff's not like that. I've read some of his books. It's not that hardcore. But it's that old school way of thinking that came out in the 60s, 70s, and 80s where you're like, push them, persuade them, manipulate them, talks about the facts and features and why they need to buy, right? Push, push, push. And that's the first mode of selling. Let's go down that topic. Then you have the second mode of selling. We call that era 2 type of sales. That's consultative selling. Came out in the 80s, completely against that way of selling by books like Spin Selling, right? Have you ever heard of Neil Rackham? He was a professor, never actually sold himself, but did a lot of scientific studies that said you need to ask questions to find the needs of the prospect. But the problem with just that is if you're just asking logical-based questions, what type of answers does your prospect give you back? Logical-based answers. And do human beings make decisions on logic or emotion? Emotion, right? They just justify with logic. So more persuasive than boiler room selling, but you're still going to play the numbers game because you're not bringing out very much emotion in that conversation. You're just staying surface level. So if you're asking questions like, John, it's great to be here today. Tell me this. What's 2 problems that you have that keep you awake at night? Or Sally, what solution are you looking for? Or Mary, what type of budget do you have set aside? Like that's just surface level questions. And they're going to give you a surface level answer back. And you're never going to go under the surface to find out what's really going on. What are the real problems? What are the root causes of the problems? Like how did the problem happen? And then how is it affecting them? Once you learn how to not just find out their why, but what's behind that why, that's when the sales gates are open. That's when you make a ton of money. Like those industries I made multiple 7 figures a year as a salesperson, nobody even ever made a third of that. Like a top salesperson in the industry is making 200 grand a year.
How'd you learn?
I was making that every month. Well, my behavioral science background in college that I dropped out of.
So you were listening to some professors on basically psychology and saying, hey, let's apply some of this. Let's see if it's real. Robert Greene does a good job of that.
You know, two of the greatest teachers about behavioral science and human psychology, I'm going to throw this out, this might be unexpected, are Socrates and Jesus Christ himself. So where I developed NEPQ, that stands for Neuro-Emotional Persuasion Questions, was what I was learning from professors on behavioral science, but they've never been in the ballgame. It's different when you're in the trenches, right? You're just teaching theory, not action. Then what I was learning from the old sales gurus, but then I was also studying, my minor was in like New Testament Christianity. I know, weird stuff. I just love that kind of stuff, history. And so I was studying Christ, and I was also studying human psychology with Socrates.
Well, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
What's his real name?
Christ? Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
It's the Hebrew word. I don't know how to pronounce it.
What's his real name?
Yahweh or something.
You don't know?
Something like
you don't
that.
Really know?
I don't remember, dude.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard the scripture that says, my children will know my name?
Okay. Well, we know the English version Bible, Jesus.
Have you heard the scripture?
Yes, I have.
That my children will know my name.
Will know my name and follow my voice.
And when I say, what's his name? And you say, I don't know, something.
Well,
you don't know his name?
It's a Hebrew word. It's a Hebrew word. I don't know how to pronounce it. Do you know how to pronounce it?
Yeah.
It's Yahweh.
Yashua.
Yeah, Yashua, Yahweh. Yeah, that's what I just said.
Not Yahweh. Yahweh's God.
Is the God of the Old Testament. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, his actual name was Yashua.
Yashua.
Which is now Joshua.
Yeah, in Hebrew. I didn't know how to pronounce it, man.
Joshua.
Forgive me.
Well, now you do.
There you go.
So
let's go back to that. So
go back to
what I learned about Socrates and Yashua, like you pronounce it, is that the reason why they changed and influenced so many is because they asked easy to answer questions that allowed their prospects or the people they were talking to question their way of thinking of why their situation kept happening. And they viewed him as more of the expert or the authority to follow to get them where they wanted to go. Now, there's a lot more to that, but that's who I studied. And that's where I came up with neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. That's methodology.
NEPQ, neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. And then what you just said is Socrates.
Yeah.
So what book, or what would you read?
Oh, there was just books that you would read, like going through human psychology on Socrates. Like you'd have to do papers on Socrates and what he did. I remember I did mine, like my whole thesis, based on like how he moved others and how he persuaded other people to think and to follow his way of thinking.
What do you think?
It's 20 years ago.
Give me some examples of emotional questions versus logic-based questions.
In what part of the process? What part of the sales process?
Oh, the P, the Q part.
Well, that's just questions. So let me give you an example. I'll just throw some random examples. Let's say that you're in the beginning of a sales conversation and the prospect says, well, we're meeting with some other companies. Why should we go with you? Why should we go with your company? Our company already works good. What do most prospects say?
Most prospects?
Or most salespeople. What would they say if they said, well, why should I go with you? What would they say at the beginning of a conversation? Just normal, everyday salesperson. What would they do?
The average Joe would probably start talking about the competitor being worse.
Well,
how much better we are.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? Like, we've got the best this, we've got the best this, we've got the best that. They'd get defensive, right? That's just a human reaction. So what you want to do in that type of situation is you want to disarm. It's like, you've ever read that book by Chris Voss, the negotiating, the FBI guy, where he's like, you talk about
Never split the difference.
Never split the difference. You talk about disarming the situation. Well, sales is the same way. You have to disarm the prospect and take the sales pressure out of the conversation to get them to want to engage with you. So if somebody says, well, why should we go with you? What we train salespeople to do in companies, we say, well, I'm not quite sure you should yet. And I might need to know a little bit more about kind of what you're using now in that area just to see if we could even help you in the first place. For example, and then I'm going to ask a situation question. So when I say, well, I'm not quite sure you should yet, and you pause for 2 to 3 seconds, what does that do to the prospect?
Takeaway.
It disarms them. It takes the sales pressure out because number one, no salespeople have ever done that to them. They wouldn't even know that skill, right? And so when you remove the sales pressure, it automatically causes them to want to pull you in, to want to engage more because you're more different. You're viewed more as like, wow, what's this? This guy's saying he might not even be able to help us. I better listen. But if I say, oh, we can help you for sure, they do what? Fight back. block, and pushback.
Yeah, it's funny that you say this because, again, I didn't go to college, but
I didn't learn that in college.
But I did accidentally deploy some of the shit you're talking about.
Yeah.
When I was selling cars,
yeah.
people would come on the lot.
Mm.
One of my questions was, you don't have to buy today, do you?
I like that. You disarm the situation, take the sales pressure.
Yeah, they'd
out.
walk up. I'm just looking. I'd say, no problem. You don't have to buy today, do you? And they'd be like, no, not at all. And then boom,
taking the
out of
pressure
curiosity, are you looking for 2-door, 4-door, sticker automatic? Come out, or
I like it, yeah.
or whatever. But
yeah,
that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just naturally did it.
You just didn't know what you're doing.
I didn't know it.
See, we know what we're doing because we put it in a process, right? So we
and a science
behind it. So that's what gets duplicatable results. So when you see, right now, Brad, I was just telling Chris, we're getting about 140 new testimonials every single month from salespeople and our clients going through.
But your testimonials are good ones.
These are big ones. Yeah, I hate testimonials.
Because I follow you. I'm like, son of a bitch, dude.
I know.
I better go through his content.
Yeah, the thing is, I hate testimonials where like, oh, I went through the training course and it was really good. I'm like, dude, that's not a freaking testimonial. Like, I want to see testimonials where the salesperson was like, I was making $3,000 and now, 3 months later, I'm making $20,000 in commissions. Or I was making $8,000 and now I'm making $30,000 in commissions. Like, those are big testimonials. Or we've got people that went from $10,000 a month in sales, really good, commission only, making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month in commissions. That's big testimonials. We have almost 3,000 in the first 2 years.
And you help companies and individuals. So if anybody's listening and they like what old Jeremy's saying, reach out. Because again, he has 7th level sales.
Yeah,
7th level sales is what this boils down to.
Yeah, you know what 7th level stands for?
What?
Oh, it's Hebrew. See, we're going back to this Hebrew stuff now. So 7th level means in Jewish way of thinking, there's 7 levels of heaven or 7 glories, and God dwells in the 7th heaven, and that's where everything is perfected. Human beings can become perfected like God. God is perfected. So it's the 7th level of sales and persuasion. Going back, one thing that people are always like, well, sales, like communication, it's not that important. Oh, really? Open up the very first book of the Bible. What did they talk about? The war in heaven. There was a war in heaven, right? There was a war in heaven, Satan versus God, and they were, trying to do all this stuff, and a third of the host of heaven followed Satan. Well, was that a war of tanks and bombs and guns or swords? No, it was a war of words. It was a war of persuasion. It was a war of convincing others of their way of thinking. A lot of people don't think that, but it starts from the very beginning of even the Bible, the biblical record that we have.
Well, words are important.
Words are very important.
I think they're magical.
I think so too. And it's how you ask the words.
You know why that's why they call it spelling?
Why? I don't know that.
Spell the word?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I dropped out of college too quick.
Dude, they spell the word. Think about the word spelling. Like if you cast a spell, you spell a word.
It's magic.
I truly do believe that.
Well,
I think if people knew the power of their tongue, they'd manage it better.
Well, why are all the wars in the world ever started? Lack of communication. People don't see each other's viewpoints, right? It's like my way or the highway. Like if you have a nuclear bomb, doesn't matter if we have 5,000, it's our way or the highway, right? That's why people get pissed off. When we don't view people, when we don't, the late Stephen R. Covey in his book, 7 Highly Effective Habits, that book is a great book. He talked about first seek to understand and then be understood. And most politicians don't know how to do that. Very bad communication skills. We love you, politicians. We got to have you. But just communication skills. They need to hire 7th level, possibly.
They probably should.
They probably should.
Now, when you say closers or losers,
and
you're referring to old school, asshole tactics, pushy dickweeds, in closer school, the first thing I tell people is if you want to sell more, stop selling. Yeah. That's, again, very similar to what you're saying. I'm just saying it different. But my point is if you approach a conversation looking for the relationship, not the sale, you'll end up selling them if there was a sale there in the first place. Because, dude, if there's no sale there, there's no magical fucking words to get you to fucking push people into a sale. At the end of the day, there was a sale there to begin with. If you go in there looking for the relationship, you're going to end up selling more or everything you would have had you not.
Yeah. Well, the co-author of the book that's coming out, the new model of selling, how to sell to an unsellable generation. So Jerry Acuff, in one of his books, he's one of your clients as well. Love the guy. He's on my podcast. He talks about in one of his books from a few years ago, he says, stop acting like a seller and start thinking like a buyer. And most salespeople, they don't know how to do that. Like they don't put themselves in that person's shoe and understand their buying behaviors, understand why they're persuaded or why they're not persuaded. And they're just winging it all the time. And we call those people product pushers, right? It's like taking a bucket of mud and like throwing it against the wall, like hoping and praying that something we're going to say is going to magically stick with the prospect and they're just going to magically want to buy. I call that hopium. It's a drug that so many salespeople are on where they just hope and pray something they're going to say is going to trigger the person to want to buy. And it's such a hard and unpredictable way to make a living or to grow your company.
So if someone says, why should I go with you?
Yeah.
The answer is maybe you shouldn't.
Well, I'm not quite sure you should yet. Then you pause. You want to pause. You can't say that too quick. It's all about the tonality.
That's where I was going next. Is tonality as important as, what's his name? Belfort says it.
100%. I mean, it's 70% of the sale. It's not just the questions you're asking, it's how you're asking the question. Are you asking, like if I'm going to ask a commitment question at the end to get them to move forward and purchase my solution, we don't call them closing questions, we call them commitment questions, right? And if I said this question, do you feel like this could be the answer for you? Now that is a question because of how I paused there and I'm thinking like I'm thinking about what I'm asking, even though I know what I'm going to asking. It triggers the prospect to think deeper about that question. But if I said the same question, do you feel like this could be the answer for you? Completely different way of viewing that question. It's more of a knee-jerk question that requires a knee-jerk reaction, right? So it's all about how you ask the question. So Jordan is 100% right. It's your tonality, it's your verbal and nonverbal skills, like how you're asking those questions and when you're asking them, because you can't just randomly ask a question and your prospect is magically going to open up. You have to make that conversation conversational. You know, selling is like, it's like, you know, and I heard you and Jordan talking about scripts. Scripts are so important, but they have to be natural. It has to be memorized. If you're sitting there like reading off of a script like a telemarketer, people pick up on that stuff so quick, like you are done. But it's just like if you're a movie star like George Clooney or Brad Pitt, right? Everything you see them say in that movie, 100% scripted. 100% scripted, okay? But did it sound scripted? Did you view them when you watched that movie as George Clooney? No, you viewed them as the character they were portraying. That's how natural they made their lines. And as a salesperson, you have to memorize your questions and know when and where to ask those questions. So like if your wife hits you on the head at 3 a.m. and is like, hey, I want you to ask me 3 questions in the middle of the sales process to find out what their objective state is, you know exactly what to do and where to go. And it doesn't matter if they throw you off course, you know exactly how to get them back on course. That's when you've truly mastered the art of persuasion, what we call NEPQ.
Now, does anybody ever screw with you and throw you shade because you're saying persuasion? People think that's a bad word.
You know, I'm funny, like on our Facebook ads, when we advertise, you'll get some people that are like, oh, you know, salespeople, I always say this, low 6-figure salespeople have huge egos. Like they think they know everything. They make $105,000 a year, $130,000 a year. And they think I cannot learn anything else. I'm the pinnacle of my industry. Like there's nothing else I could ever learn. And that's the problem. They just stay where they're at. They never learn advanced skills to go above that. Right. So we'll have people on our Facebook ads that sometimes be like, oh, you know, I know all this and blah, 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 blah. And who are you to say that you know what selling is? And, you know, I usually try to get on there as much as I can, but we've got people that will respond and we train them what to do. And they'll just say, oh, just Google my name. You know, and they'll go to Google my name and it'll have that direct selling association. Number 45 in the world, made X of millions of dollars every year. And like, well, I possibly got lucky though. You know, I probably just got lucky, you know, 17 years straight, no big deal. I don't know anything. And people like love that. And then your enemies become like neutralized. They might not necessarily become your fans. A lot of times you can get them to become your fans, but you have to learn how to neutralize your haters and at least make them neutral. And that's one thing politicians don't know how to do.
So if I'm in sales, what do you think the number one most important thing I can do is?
I think the number one most important thing you have to do if you want to be very, very successful in our day and age is you have to learn skills that work with human behavior rather than using old school techniques that work against human behavior. Because if you're starting off the sales call, here's what we have to understand. In the first 10 seconds of every sales call, every interaction, boardroom meeting, Zoom meeting, phone dial, your prospects subconsciously, that's just the way our brains work, are picking up on cues, based verbal and nonverbal cues based on your tonality and what you are saying and or asking that trigger their brain to react one of two ways. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have the right skills, it triggers their brain to react negatively to you. They throw out objections. We don't need it. We already have that. Call me back in a week, a month. Can you send me some information? Like, they're just trying to get rid of you. Now, if you know what questions to ask, it triggers the human brain to become so curious enough that they feel like they have to engage with you. They become so curious enough that if they feel like if they don't engage, that they're missing out on something that could be important to them. And so you have to learn those skills, because if you're starting off the first part of your calls and they're automatically triggering sales resistance from what you're saying, you're like climbing up against the wall the whole rest of the call when you don't have to.
Or getting dejected, which causes your brain to shut down. And now all of a sudden you're a pussy and you quit. Yeah.
You don't have the right skills. That's why, Michael Jordan said something. I just read this. I've read a lot of his books. I never saw this before. He said, you can take 10,000 jump shots a day, but if your technique is off and your technique is wrong, you're never going to be great at basketball. Like, you're never going to be great in life if your technique is off. You can practice that same technique over and over and over, but you're going to keep getting the same results. Selling is the same way. You can go out and work your ass to the ground and work 10, 12, 14 hours a day and knock doors, and you can be completely still broke because you haven't learned the right skills that work with human behavior. It's all about working with the brain to take out the sales pressure of that conversation, to diffuse, to disarm the prospect, and to come into that conversation unbiased. Your prospects have to feel that you're not biased. The moment they think that you are biased, like you need this, you want this, I know you're going to get this, that's when they shut down. When they feel like you're unbiased, that you're just seeing if you can actually help them, you're not sure yet. Because how would you know unless you ask certain questions to even find out if they even have problems, right?
Well, what if you're certain that your product can help anybody?
Well, everybody's certain their product can help anybody, of course.
That's why people do that.
But it doesn't mean that the prospect's certain, right? Every salesperson's like, well, my product is the best. Well, no shit, Sherlock. How many salespeople say when they're selling, our product's the 5th best in the market? No, everybody says they're the best, right? And it goes in one ear, out the other, because your prospects have become so conditioned to salespeople saying, we're the best, we have the best this, we got this, that all it does is it triggers them to not trust you even more, especially when you talk down to your competitors, 100%.
That's right.
Oh, it's bad.
So give me some more examples. People like examples.
What examples would you like?
Oh, how much is it? When someone says they heard you and they're like, well, how much is it?
Well, is that the first part of the call or the end part of the call?
Well, it depends. A lot of times customers decide that.
Well, okay, so it'd be a different response, because typically if it's at the end of a call, we're presenting back what they said their problems were and how our solution will solve that. And then we tell them, for us to be able to solve these problems for you, and then we repeat back what they want, you're going to need to put in, and then we bring up the price, right? But if they're at the beginning of the call and they say, well, how much is it? It depends on what you sell, would be depending on the answer. So I might say, well, how do you mean by how much is it? Because I don't know what that means. Like, maybe you're selling you sell insurance and you have 57 different types of policies. How can you say, well, it's this, right? You've got 57 different type of products.
Well, what were you presenting them?
Well, are you talking about the end or the beginning? That's what I'm saying.
Well, like, let's say I'm presenting you this cup.
Okay.
And you like it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, a salesman wants that question.
Well, I want to bring that up when I'm presenting back what they said they're wanting and how we solve that, and for them to be able to get that cup so that they can repeat back, have more energy to do a podcast. They're going to need to put in around XYZ dollars. So notice I'm repeating back what they said they want, and I'm tying the money into getting them what they want. What we have to understand, and I'll go back to that question in a second, but I'll give you an overview. Here's where everybody's at. Here's what their current situation is. Some people call that the current state, okay? Here's where they want to be. We call that the objective state. Some people call it the future state. What's this big gap in the middle? This is all of the problems that your questioning has allowed them to start seeing that they have. If you're good. Now, if you don't know what questions to ask, or your questions suck, or they're just too surface level questions, guess what happens with that gap?
Shrinks.
Well, it shrinks. And the smaller the gap, the less likely they are to see of their current situation and where they want to be, that your solution is actually going to solve that. And now they start to view your price as something that's expensive, like another bill. But if you're able to see that they have you're able to help them see they have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 problems they didn't even know. And this gap is so bad in their mind from where they are compared to where they want to be. They view you as that expert, and they view like, hey man, if I can just get 30 grand together, I mean, you know, it depends on what you sell. And that 30 grand is going to make me an extra, you know, $3 million a year in revenue. Let's say if you're selling B2B or something like that, then that's a no-brainer, because then they're like, 30 grand to make 3 million, that makes complete sense. And now I'm tying in them getting the money or the funds to them getting what they said they want. If they can get the money or the funds or the funding, they get what they want. If they can't get the money or the funds, they don't get what they want. And that is when you start to get your prospect to think more results-based thinking rather than price-based thinking.
You want people thinking results-based
thinking rather than price-based thinking. Why is that? Why would we want them to think results-based thinking over price-based thinking?
Because they value the results,
yes,
not the price. Yes,
and that brings me to another topic, that there's a big sales myth out there, and it's still being told out there, that people buy from people they like. That's partially true, but people buy from people who they feel can get them the best result, not who they like. You know where that comes from? People buy from people who they like. It comes from Dale Carnegie. 1936, that book's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was 1936. That was a great book for 1936. We are in 2021 right now. People in our day and age, because of the power of the internet and social media, realize they have many choices to choose the exact product or service that you sold. They didn't have all that way back in the day, right? Even 20 years ago, they didn't have that. So people buy based on who they feel can get them the best result. They don't necessarily have to like you. Like, you love grandma, but when she goes to sell you her Tupperware or her newest, latest, greatest vitamin or MLM, just because you like or love grandma doesn't mean you buy, right? You buy based on the person who you feel like can get them the best results. If you like them...
Only if you're extremely shrewd.
If you like them, that's just a bonus. People don't just buy because they like you.
I'll buy from you because I like you better than this person if the product's similar and the price is
similar.
If
it's 100% the same. That's only where that comes in. But most of the time, that's not the case.
Well, commodity-based, I would. Like I just ordered a new Ferrari.
I like it. What color?
Black.
Boring.
No. Trust me, wait till you see it.
Okay.
And besides that, I got everything's black. I got black Raptor, black Range Rover, black
You have
Escalade,
to stay black. I got a black Range Rover.
I just like when all the cars look the same.
Just all black.
And not only that, that's my favorite color.
Yeah.
The absence of color is my favorite color.
I like it. I like black.
And in reality, if you want to go psychology-based,
yeah,
black is every color but black.
That's true. I never thought about that. See, you're persuading me to your way of thinking.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, when we see colors, it's the reflection that we're seeing, which means the item that you're looking at is actually not that color. So when you see something blue, it's every color but blue. It's reflecting blue.
I've never thought about it in that way.
Interesting.
Where did you learn that at?
Psychology.
I like it. I was never taught that in psychology.
Now, do you read Cialdini?
I've read a couple of his books.
Persuasion.
Yeah. Persuasion. I like it.
What about Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power?
I've never read that book.
You haven't? You should.
I will pick it up now. I read 3 books a month, 36 books a year, every single year since I was 20.
Yeah, well, that's something that I would highly recommend. If I could go back, that's what I would have done. Robert
Greene, I like it.
I didn't read books, Jeremy. I got my face bashed in.
You just learn
the hard way.
You learn. Yeah, I love to read, man. I'm an avid reader. I read three books every month religiously. Doesn't matter if I need to take off the last day of the month to read that book to finish it. 3 books a month, 36 books a year times 10. That's 400, per year. So that's how you gain knowledge. I love learning. And some of the stuff you read, especially on sales and persuasion, I'm just going to tell you just old, outdated, repackaged garbage. But you can take a few of the techniques or things and kind of maneuver them around a little bit, massage them, and just make them much better. And I love doing that 100%. But going back to, communication skills, people buying based on who they feel they can get them the best results. Look at the last presidential election. 76 million people voted for Trump. A lot of people don't like him. They're not going to hang out with him and have a drink or go to church with him. They don't like him, but they like the results. That's why they voted for him. So a lot of times in politics, same thing. And who knows? I know
not the last time.
Maybe more people voted for him than what everybody says. I guess we'll find out. I think there's audits going around everywhere. We'll see. Indeed. I stick to my lane.
There's no way Biden got all those votes, dude. Bullshit. More than Obama, more than Trump,
that's
more than everybody, but his rallies were empty.
Yeah.
He didn't campaign worth the shit. Come on, dude.
Well, hey,
Everybody needs to wake up.
I'm not.
And by the way, if anyone did vote for Biden, I'll bet you 90% of those votes, it wasn't for Biden. It was against Trump.
It was against Trump, yeah. Well, the way Trump communicates,
I should have ran.
You should. Maybe you should run The Rock. You can run The Rock in 2020. You guys will make a good team. Dude, 2024.
Rock went for Biden again. It makes me want to think.
Maybe he didn't go for Biden. Maybe he just didn't like Trump. But see, the way Trump communicates is it causes people to either really, really love him or really, really hate him. He doesn't know how to neutralize his critic. You have to neutralize some of your critics that don't show up. But I agree. Now, I'm not, like I said, I don't know all the conspiracies. I just stick to my lane, sales training, selling companies. Everybody has their own thoughts. I'm just kind of neutral. I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican. I'm not Democrat. I voted for Obama in 2008, and I voted for Romney in 2012, and I voted for Trump this time around because maybe I didn't think he was the coolest guy since sliced bread, but I like the results of lowering my taxes because I don't like paying taxes. Because if you're a politician, you say, we're going to raise your taxes. Well, I'm not going to vote for it. I don't think if you're the coolest guy in the world, if you're going to take more of my money, why the hell would I want to vote for you?
It makes no sense.
I don't think people think about it. I'm like, I want to vote for the person who's going to take more money, and I don't even like what they take now.
Not to mention, what do they do with it?
Well, they send it over to Pakistan, right, for gender studies.
It's not for our streets and our schools.
It's not for Americans.
Yeah, it's dumb.
We need to send it over to Pakistan for, general gender studies or something. I saw that. I don't know. I'm like, what? 25 million? Like, hey, that's where our tax dollars go. Why doesn't it go to Americans?
So if I'm listening to this podcast going, dude, I like this guy's shit, like, where do they reach out for more?
Well, they can join our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group that's rocking and rolling called Sales Revolution. So just go to Facebook, go to Sales Revolution. Brad, I can give you a link if you want Sales Revolution. We've got some of your salespeople in that, I've noticed. And they can join that for free. They fill out a little two-question survey so we know what industry they're in and kind of what they're looking at. And we pop them a free training on objection prevention right when they join. How do you prevent objections from even happening in your prospect's mind? That's a ninja.
Correctly.
Well, you have to ask the right questions that get them not to even bring up the objection in their mind. So there's some crazy things that we teach in there. So we give them a free training right off the bat. I go live in there. Our CEO goes live in there a few times a week. I go live about 3 times a week. And we do a lot of value CTAs where we'll be in our group coaching calls. And let's say we're going over, like, how do you get the prospect to overcome? Like, I want to think it over, or let me talk to my spouse. And we'll do like a little clip it and say, hey, you guys want to learn how to do this? Jeremy went over this for 10 minutes. Here, you can have the training for free. 10-minute little clip, little nibble. We give them like little hors d'oeuvres, right? Now, hors d'oeuvres are not going to make you tons of money in sales. You have to learn the whole package. You have to learn A to Z sales process if you want to make hundreds of thousands a year as a sales professional, for sure. Or if you want your teams to start producing double, triple, and start hitting their quota, if you're the business owner, they have to learn the right skills. So they can just join Sales Revolution, Brad, go in there for free and get some value out of that. And if they want additional help and learn how to sell more, they can always hit us up and we'll get on there and see if we can help them.
And if you guys already know you want some help, just go to jeremyminer.net.
No, that's not the right website.
Which one?
That's an old one, dude.
I was going to say, why do you have a .net?
No, I would never have .net. That was just like some old SEO stuff we did a few years ago. So
the only way I'd have a .net is if I were an accountant or a
all they
CFO.
need to do is Google my name. Just Google my name. It'll pull up our corporate website, 7thlevelhq.com, 7thlevelhq.com. You can request a demo for our platform. It's actually on Brad's Lightspeed platform. We do have Kajabi too. We have 2 different places, but we're going to start using Brad's a lot more.
One's a hand Kajabi.
I know the hand Kajabi. I already heard this. I heard this a while ago. I heard you talking to Taylor Welch because I had him on my podcast right before yours, and he was telling me about that.
I like funny. Taylor. He's a good dude.
Taylor's a good dude. Yeah. Yeah. So
smart too.
He's a smart dude. Yeah. Early 30s. Yeah. He grew up in the town that I live in, Springfield, Missouri. So we have a lot in common there. But yeah, they can just go to that website. I just have them join Sales Revolution. That's where they're going to learn a lot about us, but they can also go to our website, 7thlevelhq.com, or just Google my name. It's right there. But join Sales Revolution. That's where they're going to learn the most.
And what about like the book that's coming, the new model of selling?
How to sell to an unsellable generation. Yeah. So Jerry and I are talking about how selling has changed, right? So the thing I don't like about books is most of it is just theory. Like there's no examples. And it's hard to teach tonality. You can't teach tonality in a book, but there's no examples. So what Jerry and I do is we kind of dissect where selling has been. Like when was the first sales model ever invented? Does anybody know? Do you even know where this first sales model was invented or what it was called? Did you know it was invented in 1898 by a guy named Sir Elmo Lewis? who actually sold circuses. It's called the AIDA model of selling: attention, interest, desire, action. You ever seen that movie Glengarry Glen Ross? You've seen that, right? Closers, put the coffee down, and on the whiteboard he has AIDA, AIDA. That's the first sales model ever invented from 1898 by a guy who sold circuses. Does anybody know that? You probably want to know that if you're going to make a profession out of selling something, where the first sales process went through and why, and how buyers were completely different in those days. So we kind of take you through this journey of how selling has evolved, but how the prospect has evolved, how the consumer has evolved, and why they're so skeptical now, why they're so cautious about purchasing anything, because most salespeople have never caught up to that. They're still using sales skills that they've learned that were really prevalent in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They're now repackaged with a few different things like it's the gospel. And that's why they wonder why they have to play this numbers game. So we kind of take the person through a journey of where selling has been, why it's changed, and now here's what you do about it. Here's how you sell to an unsellable, skeptical, cautious generation. It's a good book.
What's the number one thing you think?
Like I said, learning skills that work with human behavior. Disarming the prospect in that initial conversation where they feel like they want to engage with you, rather than triggering sales resistance like most salespeople do, because they assume right off the beginning of the call, trigger sales resistance. And I see still sales trainers that sell a lot of books, sell stuff, and they still teaching that stuff. And that's why I got into sales training 3 years ago, because I could not stand the ads. I'd see these ads and I'm like, good Lord, like that is the worst advice you could ever do. Like if I sold that way, my income would go down by like 95% selling the same thing I was at that point. So it really annoyed me. So I'm like, maybe I should start teaching this to everybody. So that's why I got in.
Maybe you have a takeaway close.
What do you mean by takeaway close? That means different things to different people. The old takeaway. Well, the old takeaway, give me an example of an old takeaway.
I'm not sure this is for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's not really, I wouldn't call that a takeaway close. I just call that like I'm diffusing the pressure of the conversation.
Know,
different words.
You just have newer, sexier words.
Oh,
you call it
much
diffusion.
Sexier. Yeah, diffusing the objection, right? I want to diffuse the objection. Now, instead of closing questions like, do you want the red one or the blue one? Option close. Why don't you give it a try? The invitational close. The Benjamin Franklin close, or, do you want it delivered Wednesday at 1 or Thursday at 2? Like you got to stop all that old school stuff. The either or, that stuff does not work, especially if you're in a more complex selling environment where it takes multiple calls, like more of a B2B environment. Like people will look at you and you do that and just like, this guy's horrible, like get out of my office. So I want to ask commitment questions at the end after I've gone through the, discovery process, the presentation or whatever. I'm going to say, so do you feel like this could be the answer for you? Right? And just look them in the eye. Yeah. And most of the time they're going to say, yeah, I do. If you've done the discovery process right and you've engaged them. Yeah, I do. Well, hold on. Why do you feel like it would though? Like it's almost like I'm probing. I call that an NEPQ probe. Well, hold on. Why do you feel like it would though? It's like I'm skeptical. Well, it would work for us because of this, because of that. And now what are they doing? They're selling themselves, right? Persuading themselves, convincing themselves. It's the takeaway close, I guess, as you call it. And then I might say,
it is.
And then we ask a second commitment question, depending on what you sell. It's different for different industries, but do you feel like this is something you can do to, I guess, get you where you're wanting to go? And that's generalized. We would more industry specific, depending on the company we're training. Well, yeah, I do. Okay, well, I don't really have anything else to go over with you. It looks like we covered the basis of what you're looking for in X, Y, and Z. Really, the next step would be, if it's appropriate, is we would make some type of arrangement for your X, Y, Z, yada, yada, yada. At that point, we would yada, yada, yada. And then at the end, would that be appropriate, or how do you want to proceed from here? Now, a lot of times when we go into companies, like, you're giving them all the control. No. Because do you think you have control at the end if you say, okay, now who do you want the contract to be in? Okay, and you want it delivered Wednesday at 1 or Thursday at 4. You don't have any control when you do that. You have zero control. Unless you're selling like a $5 a month magazine, you have zero control, especially in a more complex selling environment. They have full control. But if you've taken them through that engagement process the correct way and you've got them to persuade themselves like we teach, guess who really has control? You do. But they feel they're in control. And that's where you want your prospect. Anytime the prospect says you could sell ice to an Eskimo or you could sell anything to anybody, that is the worst thing you could ever get, because that means you probably didn't make that sale, right? You don't want to sell ice to an Eskimo because they don't need that. But do they need a nice big fur coat? You could probably sell them that. Do they need a better igloo that's a little bit warmer? You could probably sell them that. Do they need nice big gloves? You could probably sell them to that. That's what the true essence of selling is. It's not selling them something they don't need. It's selling them what they need to solve their problems. That's where you become the expert. That's where you make a lot of money.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know, I'm saying everything. I'm saying the exact opposite of probably what most sales trainers you have say, and you're doing. Am I not?
I wouldn't say exact opposite, but definitely you're giving what I call people real shit, tactical shit. Because again, I mean, if you listen, if you've been on closer school, haven't you?
Yeah.
So like in closer school, even though that's an old, dirty word for you.
Yeah, I know. Just a dirty word.
I say, dude, don't try to sell them shit. Build a relationship. You say the same thing. I say you need to be positioned as the expert.
Yep.
That's what you just got done saying.
100%.
You have to ask questions to find out from the customer what, pain points, et cetera, that they have.
Yeah.
Because the customer will tell you how to sell the product to them if you're asking the right questions, but they don't ask the right questions.
Your prospect has all the answers you'll ever need, but you have to learn what questions to ask that will actually get them to open up. Because you can't just ask them like, what are your needs? What are your problems? And they're just going to tell you,
what are
right?
some slick ways to get them emotions going?
So first of all, you want to ask what are called situation questions that find out their present situation. That's more fact finding, right? And then you want to ask them problem awareness questions, and that helps them find out what the problem is. Let's say if you sold, let's say if you sold Amazon training. We just trained a big company that does millions a month, and they sell Amazon training to people who want to start an Amazon business. SBA Amazon business are huge in Australia. And so the first problem where the situation questions we're finding out from that prospect is, what do they do now for a living? And how long have they been doing it? Now, why do we want to find that out? Because their main problems are they have a job that they want to get out of, and that's why they want to start a business with Amazon. Because of why? So they can make more money and have more time with their families. That's what they want. That's why they want to start a business. So our situation questions are finding out what they do, how long they've been doing it, facts, doesn't move them. First problem awareness question, I'm going to come back and say, so John, tell me this. You've been a firefighter for the last 12 years. Do you like what you're doing for a living? That.
At what point do you teach the pauses?
In our coaching programs. It's hard to teach that in our virtual training courses, all the tonality. We teach some of it, but we're big in our coaching programs.
Is a pause part of tonality?
Yeah, verbal pausing.
I thought tonality was how sometimes you might do this, and sometimes you might do this.
And you have to verbal pause. One of the best people ever spoken that I've heard of that's really good at verbal pausing is President Obama. Now, like I said, I'm not saying I support his politics or anybody's. I'm neutral here. But he was really great at moving an audience by the way he would say things, and then he paused. And he got you to think deeper about what he was asking. Now, other presidents and politicians just talk. And it's like they just mumble jumble.
He'd pause all the time.
Yeah, it's a verbal pause.
Michelle and I are really thankful that you guys decided to come here today and show up.
But do you know what?
Support us.
Do you know what that does?
What?
It causes their audience to hone in and pay attention to them. That's what a verbal pause does. So that type of question, if I said, so do you like what you're doing for a living? Completely different reaction. That's a knee-jerk question that they're going to give me a knee-jerk reaction. Oh yeah, I love it. Okay, where do you go with that? So if I say, so this job that you've had the past 12 years, do you like what you're doing for a living? It causes them to think deeper about that question. So that's an example of how to use a verbal pause in your tone to elicit a response that you want. That's just a little example.
How do you know to pause where you pause, not later down the sentence? Like, do you like what you're doing for a living?
Because I want to pause when I'm hitting like more of an emotional subject. So let's say if I'm probing, let's say if I'm clarifying and probing, and let's say that we're selling the same thing. I'm just giving you an example. Let's say if you're selling Amazon training and their problem is they want to make more money, they want to have more time, they don't like what they're doing, right? And they say, oh, and I ask that problem awareness question, do you like what you're doing for a living? They say, no, I don't like it. Well, hold on, what don't you like though? Okay, I'm probing, all right? Or if they come back and say, no, I don't like it, I just have a long commute. Well, most salespeople would just move on and they would just ask the next surface level question, but I'm going to clarify them, long commute? Or I'm going to say, how do you mean by long commute? Now, why do I want to clarify what that means?
Because that's what their pain is. Because
I want them to relive the pain. Now, by them just saying, I don't like the commute, they're not reliving the pain. That's just surface, right? That's logical based. But I say, well, hold on. What do you mean by long commute? Oh, you have no idea. Like I've been driving back and forth an hour and a half each way. I see. Okay. And how long has that been going on for? Now notice I'm like an actor. I know what I'm going to ask. I've been doing that for 10 years. So you having to commute back and forth the last 10 years like that, has that had a impact on you? Now notice, why did I pause between has that had an impact on you? Impact is the emotional word, the emotional pain that I want the prospect to feel. So I'm going to pause right before I get there and then say that, which causes them to relive more of that pain. That's why there's certain places you have to know where to verbal pause and other places you don't. And we teach all that in our group training, our group coaching. That's outside of our courses.
Dang,
you have
fellas.
not been giving me that many bombs today, dude. Come on.
Well, dude, actually, believe it or not, the less bombs, the better. You know why?
Yeah.
Because I forget them. because I'm enthralled with the information.
I guess, man. I'm like, dude, I have not, like when I was here a little bit over a year ago, I got a lot of dropping bombs, and man, I felt like I was just giving more details this time, and I did not give as many dropping bombs.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm listening closer. I got Jordan B. Peterson coming on.
I like it.
Next week, I think.
I like it.
And, you know, I don't know if I'll drop any bombs because what do you do just the whole time?
I got to get one of those in my office. I got to get one of those. I'm going to get all my salespeople. We have one of our salespeople. His name's Tony. And he has this little thing like you have. And when a customer starts,
I don't have a little thing.
Well, whatever the thing is back there, I can't see it. The big thing, the big bomb button, whatever. He has a little button on his desk. And when a prospect starts complaining, like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. He pushes this button and he goes, wah, wah, wah. And it like starts crying. Like, it's such a pattern interrupt. It's freaking amazing. It's awesome.
Dude, if I got a company and a whole bunch of salespeople, how do you implement something if everybody's already down the road a bunch of other ways?
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy with our process, you know, like our largest client, Google AdWords, we train 4 of their divisions. They, you know, we train them inbound, outbound AdWords and their cold calling stuff where they were selling like some new type of services to electricians, completely new. We'd never trained in that before. We came in, wrote out their sales structures for them. First quarter, I think you know this, 244% increase in sales, tens of millions of dollars more. So it doesn't matter to us, like our framework works for any industry, like our situation questions all the way to our commitment questions and consequence questions and solution awareness questions. So we go into a company, we learn what problems their solution solves, and then we write out that sales structure based on what problems their solution solves. And we tie in NEPQ to what they sell. To us, it's really simple. We did that with a big car company, the largest car company in Canada. It's called 401 Auto. They're massive. They have like 50-some dealerships up in Canada. Well, when COVID happened, we brought them on as a client a month before COVID. Okay, and they're actually on the Lightspeed platform. A month before COVID, well, what happened in Canada? They got shut down. You can't even, right now, they're still locked down. You cannot go into a car dealership store and buy a car. So we had to really transition them. Like they've got all these employees. They're going to go out of business. A lot of car dealerships have up there. So we had to teach them how to go from home and have their salespeople call leads and do all that stuff and then meet them at the dealership outside with that person's car without them ever seeing it. And even during COVID, we've got that company up almost 90%. And they were talking to me the other day, they're like, dude, if COVID was not happening right now, we'd probably be at 300 to 400% right now. And that's car sales, completely different than like Google. Doesn't matter, the industry does.
And you're even capable, if a company said, man, I just need quicker help. You could literally, because you've got salespeople already trained.
We do.
That will go in and buy certain products. What's that, Sales Sniper? Yeah,
that's our kind of done-for-you division. It's called Sales Sniper. So our headquarters are out of Sydney, Australia. I'm just the boring guy over here in the United States, but my CEO, my vice president, all of our salespeople are headquartered right in our offices in Sydney. And so we do a lot of that for big influencers like Ryan Serhant. Have you ever seen the New York $1 Million Listing? We do all of his stuff for his social media training where he trains agents how to brand themselves. And like we've killed that for him. Vince Del Monte, one of the top fitness coaches in North America, we do all of his stuff. Brandon Kane, who's a big influencer out in Hollywood, does Taylor Swift and Rihanna's social media, all the big people. He does all their social media. So we do a lot of people there, and we'll bring in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 salespeople that go through our certification program and our training. And then we assign them to those companies. We manage them. We train them. You know, something we're talking about doing some stuff with your affiliate program and stuff like that. And it just, you know, it works. You know, people keep coming back. We get too much business. We have to turn away most people.
Do you feel like that would be the best option?
For?
See, I just pulled your shit on you.
For?
See, did you see the pause?
See, you're learning the verbal pause. You're going to be, I'm going to start tuning these podcasts now, and I'm going to start seeing the verbal pause. I'm going to invoice you for that.
I think I'm accidentally doing that shit anyway.
That's good.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I'm so effective. Maybe that's why I could build an 8-figure company.
I like it.
And close the closers. And
it's a lot different than going from a salesperson like I was to building a company. You know, I started doing that alone by myself 3 years ago. I was the CEO. Oh, good Lord, man. Not my skill set, man. So about a year ago, like I brought in a CEO, Matt, who you met, and like we have scaled times 20 since then, because now I can focus on training and actually what I do best, like my wheelhouse, and not try to do all that and run the business at the same time. So it's about getting the right people around you that makes you grow. Boom.
Teams, folks. If you got a team, you want help, reach out to Jeremy.
Yeah.
Folks, I appreciate you guys.
Oh, I got one last request though.
Go.
So my vice president of sales, Marco, who you met, and our top salesperson, Bill Walsh, out of London, asked me, because they are big fans of the show. They watch it every time you have a new show. They asked me for an autographed copy of any of your books. So I wanted to give a shout out to my VP of sales, Marco Cortese, over in the Sydney office, Bill Walsh over in London. I think we might have helped Brad persuade himself to sign a copy of a book for you.
Indeed.
I like it.
Folks, I appreciate you guys listening to the show. It's getting bigger and better. Every single freaking week, I get freaking guests that drop knowledge on you. Do me a favor, share it out, leave a comment. I don't ask for much. I'm not charging you for this, and it does change lives. So just do me a favor. Go leave a comment, rate the bitch, and share it out so it goes farther up the charts, man. And till next time, keep it real.
Dropping bombs with the real Bradley. Subscribe now.